Hello everybody and welcome back to yet another exciting episode of the Gameable Audio. I am your host Christofer Schenström and this is episode 51, a Constance special together with the composer Tiago Rodrigues. Hello!
Hello, Chris. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
This is an actual special one, not just a special on Constance, but it's very special to me as I was actually recommended to talk to you from a friend named Bernardo Vidal. I guess you know him.
Yeah. I was with him last time at Gamescom this year. Not this year, sorry. It's 2025 already. So 2024. Last year. Yeah, he's a really great guy, and I'm happy
Definitely
that he thought of me for this. Yeah.
No, both him and me, we're still being in contact a little bit. I'm so much interested in the different kind of works and projects he's getting into and also everything going on in his life. So as we were discussing a little bit, he actually just name dropped your name. It's like, yeah, talk to him and talked about your podcast a little bit. And I think he's just a great dude to have on the podcast. I was like, okay, never heard of this dude. Of course it's going to be interesting to me because networking and getting into more different kind of projects and so on is always so exciting to me.
Yeah. And thank you for your patience, by the way, because I know this has been a tough time negotiating myself in because I was just so busy with so many different things. And only this year that were we able to get in because we were talking about this like for quite some months now. And only this year did I get some breathing space to even consider this.
But it's great that you finally got the time. I know it usually tends to kind of be hectic and so on.
Yeah.
Because I'm guessing you are a freelance, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I do many different things beyond just, music. I guess, we're here talking about Constance, but I do a lot of things that are non-Constance related. And that's just the reality of being a freelancer, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you need to kind of find musical work kind of anywhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've started my professional routes as a freelancer in about 2014. Yeah, something like 2014, 2015. And when I started then, my only goal was I just want to do income with music. That's all. It was as simple as that. So I didn't really care what it was about. So I used to do a lot of video explainers. I used to do some voiceover stuff or sound design for little commercials, whatever it was, as long as it had audio and I could do something in audio, I would basically take it. Nowadays, I'm a little bit more selective, but I still honestly uphold the same kind of philosophy because the last thing that I want to be doing is put myself, in a situation where I don't have any income at all, and that really stifles my creativity. It's not just a matter of costs of living, even though that's factored in, of course. But for me, it's more about if I am thinking about money all the time, I don't do good work at all. So I need to make it work in a way that I have my bills paid, I have a little bit of entertainment money, which means, I don't know, I can buy a game here, a game there, go somewhere, whatever that might be. And that needs to be
live life a little bit, not just through work.
I need to have a little bit of a minimum standard of living. And that's what allows me to be in this headspace of being creative and doing music and being able to do games like Constance, honestly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I really like that. But I mean, considering that you started out with freelancing in 2014, can we hear a little bit about what got you into music in the first place? Like your origin story here.
Yeah, I think my origin story is kind of long, so bear with me.
Can we speedrun it?
Yeah, I will try to TLDR it as best as I can, but I think that...
And a percentage here.
I guess I will start with how I got into liking video game music specifically, and then work my way to 2014.
Was it through video game music that you got interested in music in the first place?
I think so. It's very hard for me to say which came first because I think it was a in tandem kind of thing, a simultaneous thing. Because
so it was an egg and a hen kind of vibe.
Yeah. It's very hard for me to say, but I think that I have this picture back at my parents' house. of me in front of a 386, a really old computer, playing Prince of Persia. I think I was 5 or 6. And quite honestly, stuff like those were the first sounds I paid attention to, stuff out of video games, right? A little bit later, not that much later, but a few years later, I did start getting into rock and metal because my eldest brother also would listen to those things. I have 3 brothers, by the way, all older. Yeah, and I started listening to stuff like rock and metal, but most of the times, the music that I would hear in my life would be out of video games because I was a huge nerd and I was a huge gamer and I would play, most of the time. I'm very introverted, especially as a child. I was very, very shy. I would not talk to people at all. And I would spend most of my time just playing video games, honestly. And I would say that the first, it's not the first, but one of the earliest memories I have from video game music is stuff like Shining Force for the Sega Genesis. Sorry, I don't know if... here in Europe, we call it Mega Drive, right? Sega Genesis is for the Americans, So
correct.
For me, it was the Mega Drive. And Shining Force was one of them. Toe Jam and Earl as well. It was very bouncy.
Really amazing soundtracks as well. I mean...
Yeah, and Rocket Knight Adventures, that's possibly my number one Mega Drive soundtrack. The things they did on that soundtrack are amazing and very varied in a lot of different styles and genres. Those times were the earliest times that I started paying attention to music. Not in the sense that I would go, this music is so exquisite. And I would speak about it at lunch or anything. No, but I would just be very...
Grow that mustache really quickly.
Exactly.
Very distinguished.
Yeah. But I would just hum it along. I would sing it along the house. I would have my little flute from school, music lessons at school, and I would play it on the flute out of the top of my head and stuff like that. And I guess those were the first things, but I didn't think much of it, right? Like I never thought...
To make video game music.
No, it was just like, I like this, and this makes life more enjoyable. I have a lot of fun playing these games and getting immersed. And one thing that I always felt like is when I was growing up, video games weren't really that cool, or at least, I'm not saying in a generational sense, but at least in the place I lived in, with the people that were surrounding me, video games were definitely not cool. And for me, that was actually a cool thing because it actually tested my love for video games, because I always knew, ever since I was really, really little, like those earliest memories I just shared about, video games always had a special meaning to me. Like they did something very differently than a TV show would do, or a cartoon would do, or a book would do. Video games specifically started, beckoning me very early in my life. And that stuck with me until today, honestly. That's something that I still feel.
Yeah.
Like that special love for video games is still with me today. And
that's really cool.
Yeah. And so I think that's where my first, passions for video game music started. And as I was growing up, I started getting into rock and metal. When I was at high school, I got my first job to buy my first guitar because I just wanted to play metal all the time. Had my first band then, which didn't go anywhere because it's your first band and you're just, doing it for laughs. But, that's how I started getting music. And again, not thinking about it in a professional way at all. It was just something I was doing back then, I think I would consider it as a hobby. But that's where I spent my time. I would go to school, then I would go to work. I would get back from work, do my homework or whatever, and play video games and play video game music at my guitar. So that was my life throughout high school, I guess. And then I went to college and I started, my degree was in sound and image. That's what it's called in English, I guess. And it's a 3-year course. 3-year bachelor, where you in the first year it's a generalist kind of year where you do both visual things and audio things, and then from the second year onwards you specialize in one of the two. Okay. I specialize in sound, which is essentially saying, I guess the equivalent of that is me having a sound engineering diploma, I guess.
Okay.
Because I got out of that, doing live gigs and being a mixing engineer live and stuff like that. I worked for a year at a Congress Cultural Center where I did shows and conferences and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but after that, I really couldn't find much more work because that year I worked there was my internship. and they couldn't afford to have me. So I had to go and try and find another job. I couldn't. So I decided, okay, I just need to pay my bills. Let's just get a call center job. Because like I told you earlier, I was very shy. I was very bad at social situations. Yeah. And I told myself, hey, maybe you should learn how to talk to people. So let's try a call center job. And let's
so
try
you went
there.
out of your comfort zone in order to challenge yourself in that way then.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't think I thought it through in that way that you're presenting right now. As in, that was in my mind, but I think it was, you know what, I'm really uncomfortable talking to people, but I don't think I could do a retail job, like being in front of people, you know? But let's try a call center job where I'm just sitting down, I do things in the computer, and I talk to people, and I learn how to talk to them, and I get money. So, and at that time, call center jobs were plenty. I don't know how it is nowadays, customer support jobs, but at that time in Portugal, there were a lot of them. So it was just a matter of, almost choosing one, right?
Yeah.
So I did that, and I did that for 4 or 5 years, and it absolutely depressed the life out of me.
I can understand, because usually with call centers, you usually need to sell something in order to make any profit on it.
Yeah.
You're not going to gain any money from the company usually by not selling anything.
I actually was in a cool-ish situation. So my first job in as a customer support was in Portugal at the time. They were implementing this thing called TDT, which is basically they were switching the analog infrastructure of radio diffusion to digital.
Oh, okay.
And so people would need a codec, like a hardware codec at home, to now start watching public TV. And so I would be supporting people that needed to buy that device and needed to point their antenna towards a new tower. And it was like slightly technical, not overly technical. It was just like, hey, just hook this into your TV with an HDMI cable. That was it. Yep. And to some more technical dudes, they would need to go on the roof and point into the right direction, and I would give them the coordinates. That was it. But that wasn't so bad, right? Because I didn't have to sell anything. But then after that 1 year, I did work for an ISP, and I would solve people's issues with their internet, their TV service, and stuff like that. But I did have to sell them, like upsell them new stuff. So that was a weird combination of I need to be overly technical, like knowing how to fix stuff remotely for these customers. And then while they're super mad at you that the service doesn't work, hey, would you like this amazing channel that lets you watch football 24/7 or whatever it is? And imagine doing that 5 days a week. 60 calls a day, 60-ish. Where you do that. And that for 3-ish
You're really
years.
plummeting to the deep at that point as well. I understand.
Yeah. And then after that, like my last one was actually a really good customer support job. It was for a video game that I'm not going to say here because I don't want to. It should be okay, but I'm not going to mention it here. But anyway, they were quite a big MMO, so I would support that MMO. But the problem was that MMO was dead. Horrible launch. And I would do the night shift. And I would basically enter at 11 p.m., get out at 8 a.m., and not have a single call to do or a single email to reply to. So I would just go there and think about life. And that was the worst thing that could have happened to me.
Oh, my God.
Because literally it was a floor with 300 people at night, all like playing Monopoly or Trivial Pursuit or whatever. Like we were just entertaining ourselves however we could because we didn't have work. And it was crazy because we were getting well paid for that, especially in the night shift. But it, like for me specifically, I was already just so depressed from doing customer support jobs for so long. And eventually that campaign also ended because it wasn't being successful. And I just decided, you know what? I just need to go home and not do anything for a while. And I go home. My brother suggests, "Hey, you're kind of on the low. I've never seen you like this. Let's go somewhere. Let's go travel." And we just like the moment we have that conversation, we decide that we go to Japan for a week. We buy the tickets right there and then, out of like pure spontaneity.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. And I know this doesn't seem like it's related to music, but I swear to you it is. I'm getting there. And we buy the tickets like 6 months ahead. Yeah, we bought the tickets in April-ish, and we go to Japan in October-ish. And I really loved going there. And going to Japan at that time really changed my life. And if I hadn't gone, I don't think I would be doing what I do nowadays. And it wasn't anything specific about music or even video games or even the culture itself. It was just the perfect break I needed to feel inspired to just do what I need to do with my life. Because it was small things like getting there and the trains being so quiet, no one talking on the train. And it was funny, the person that was renting us our Airbnb, she sent her son to come pick us at the station so we wouldn't get lost. Yeah, and he like walked with us for like a kilometer and a half or so, and he showed us the way, he told us all of the things, and his English was very broken, but we made do somehow. I didn't speak Japanese at all, but he made an effort, and that's what I saw there. Like, everyone makes such a big effort to make you feel comfortable and make you feel like you have a place here. And that just completely melted me from the inside out. And I thought that was amazing. Exactly. Yeah.
I usually think about when you're trying to help people and so on, I usually tend to use the phrase of walking the extra mile for somebody and how much worth that is to people. Because sometimes people are just doing the bare minimum, if even Steven on that one. Yeah. And I just feel like I would be happy if somebody did one thing for me, but then if they added the cherry on top, I would be ecstatic about it.
Yeah.
So looking at getting a pickup when you theoretically could have used a GPS or something like that, have everything written out on a paper or something like that, they took that extra mile to make you feel extra comfortable and most likely showed a little bit of the apartment as well. Like, oh, you find this here, and so on.
Yeah.
And that's just an amazing start just right from the get-go there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was it. And I have so many other stories of people going the extra mile for us because we were foreigners and we didn't know what to do. And I just felt so grateful, appreciative for the world itself, that when I came back, I was like, you know what? I need to go do the things I want to do. I want to do music for video games. I have no idea how the hell you do this, but let's start that now. And that's why when I came back, I started two things. I started with learning Japanese because I really wanted to come back and just be able to talk to them. And okay, let's start freelancing and seeing what this is. And I didn't know anyone. I didn't know, I had no access to how this worked. I just really had this passion for video games and video game music. So it meant I needed to learn a lot of new things, like how to actually compose music, because at the time I already had done some things, but not in a professional setting at all.
Okay.
I think I had done up until then, my best friend and I were doing this sort of media company-ish, but it was more on the visual side for sure. And when they needed audio, I would do something. And that was the extent of things I was doing, like really small videos for like corporate clients here and there. And I didn't have any material at all. Like I just had a guitar and a computer.
Yeah.
I had already spent a lot of my time, like my hobbyist time, with many DAWs. But I was just making music for myself, not thinking. Yeah. Like, I'm not even a sharer kind of person. Like, I do music, I do it for myself.
You do it for yourself, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even into necessarily sharing online my stuff, even though that's a part of my life right now. So I do do it now. But back then, it was just, no, I love this. I do it for me. I have fun. Oh, I did this. I did that, you know?
But the first steps then, in order to get out of that bubble, in order to promote yourself as somebody working with music, I know you said before that you kind of went everywhere to talk about people, but when you started getting out there, was it through the internet that you started reaching out to people, or did you start networking with people closely in regions and so on in order to get into the game?
Great question. I did both. So, yeah, I did both. So I tried the best of my ability to find pockets of communities online that would be doing this. Because even online, and nowadays I think it's relatively easy to find people that are doing things nowadays, like in 2025. It's not like 2014 was the prehistoric. The prehistoric age.
We
of the
still
internet.
had internet and so on.
But there were these polls, like these communities so well established.
Organized and established,
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't hard, but it wasn't necessarily as easy as it is today. So for me, it was more about, finding those pockets online, both international, but also local, then in Portugal, because now I live in Germany, Berlin. And I just did my best to talk to people online. And whenever there were meetups in Lisbon, I would do my best to attend them, do my best to see if people needed audio, and not even trying to sell services. It was just like, hey, I see you're doing a little game, a little experiment. Can I just put audio in it and just get a little bit of experience? Because I was coming from zero, right? Like not understanding how this works.
And I understand from Bernardo as well. I mean, the scene of video games are kind of limited in this point in time as well in Portugal overall.
Yes.
Considering the meetings and so on you had, was it more a connection to schools and so on and that type of environment?
Not even schools, because back at that time, there were probably 1 or 2 degrees in video games that you could do, if that even. Now there's way more, and there's way more opportunities for you to academically pursue video games. But back then, I don't think there were a lot. And even if there were, I was done with studying myself and done with done with going into that network necessarily. So I wasn't even paying much attention to that. So even if there was, to be honest, I don't think I would have pursued that avenue.
Okay.
Personally. So for me, it was more meetups and getting online. But honestly, what kickstarted my going into video games was starting to do video game music covers. Yeah, and I started with I was actually quite lucky, because this guy in a random Facebook group when the Final Fantasy VII remake was announced, and it was around 2014-ish or so, at E3, there was this group on Facebook, and he's like, let's do an album of covers of this. Whoever wants to do it, sign this form. And it was a Google form. And I said I wanted to do Barrett's theme in metal format. So that's what I did. And from that one music cover in an organized community, which now is Materia Collective.
I was guessing it was Materia Collective.
Exactly, from that one, I started. They've done a bunch of albums. So we started with Final Fantasy VII, then we did Final Fantasy VIII. I'm not quite sure which one we did next, but we ended up doing a fighting games like competition between labels. Then we did Undertale, and we did other Final Fantasy games. Anyway, I did a bunch of music back then and collaborated with a lot of people through that. And that was really good for me, because it got me out of my own bubble of making music and understanding how other people make music, and understanding a little bit more about production, how to communicate with musicians, how to do deliverables. Like all of these things were really good at cementing the aspect of making music. Not so much the development of games, like getting that into games, because that's different as well. But at least that first stage of making music was really great for me to do all of that because not only did I get that experience, but I also got paid royalties for that music. It's not online anymore, but back when it was, my very first trip through those royalties actually was to London to a conference for video games. So I used that money to try and fuel my career as well. So yeah, that was very, fortuitous, serendipitous, however you wanna call it. And I think that was my very solid start into getting actual income for my skills.
But at the same time, working on projects in that sense, did you ever explore any other communities in the same sense? For example, OC Remix, who makes remixes and having communities surrounding that, and also Dwelling of Duels, for example.
Yeah. So I think I have a collaboration on OC Remix, 1 or 2. I don't remember. Yeah. So I didn't involve myself that much with communities that didn't have a direct way to make some income out of it.
Okay.
With Materia Collective, from the get-go, I really don't wanna say something wrong, but I do think that from the get-go there was always the idea of putting them online and getting some sort of royalties from it, right? We from the get-go we would talk about splits. How much do you want to split with people and stuff like that? So for me, that was a better opportunity than, for example, OC Remix, where you don't really do money, and nothing wrong with that, by the way. Just I was coming from my journey of I just want to make money with music and audio and in general, right? So OC Remix is a great community, and I think the fact they still exist today is amazing, but it wasn't for me as someone that was just trying to make a living out of it. Yeah.
I understand then.
Yeah, and sorry, you mentioned another community. I don't think I know that one.
Dwelling of Duels. So Dwelling of Duels. They basically make like a challenge each and every month, and during a full month, people make covers of that theme that they have. And then by the end of the month, people can vote and make sure people are getting placements and so on. And there's always one who wins, and then second place, third place, and then the next one rolls on. And everything is shared just like a OC Remix. Everything is shared for free, but they have certain like structure on making how you make music. So, for example, I think one of the criteria is you actually need to play one of the instruments, so you can't go full batshit crazy on just making digital.
Yeah.
So I like that they have like that type of structure to it, because then even if you make a song and even if it doesn't really make like top one at that month or something like that, it's a thing to, I would say, challenge your creativity and inspiration as well, and maybe find a good inspirational point in order to get started. And of course, since a lot of people are following this community as well, there might be some developers listening in on this as well. It's like, I really like this guy's or girl's or whatever's style, and they're doing amazing work every month.
Yeah. No, I like that. I will check that out after we wrap here. But I hadn't heard about that one. Is that a new community, or does it exist for quite some time?
They've been working with this community for quite some time, but I'm a little bit unsure exactly how many, but I'm pretty sure they worked for at least like 3 or 4 years. At least. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna check them out. Yeah, they sound interesting. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Hadn't heard about anything like that at the time. So yeah, I started. That's essentially how I started. And while doing that, I made some local connections with media companies and started doing some sound design for videos or commercials. Every now and then would do a voiceover as well. Anything, ever since I started with Materia back then, I am very grateful and I'm very glad that I was able to, in some shape or form, make a steady income ever since then. But that was the one thing that kickstarted it all, which was just making those video game music covers. Yeah.
That sounds great. But considering now, as we move along with everything, what was your first real professional VGM job then, when you got into that?
Yeah, I would say first... I am stumped. I don't recall which one was my actual first paid video game. I know that the first thing that I've done that I actually have online is this Game Jam game, which was for the Game Boy Color Jam. And I did this game called Dreadbones, and it was done by this artist called Sophia.
Okay.
And she was participating in a jam, and I was like, hey, do you need audio for that? And she was like, yeah, okay. And I actually composed that in a tracker. I forgot the name of the tracker, but it was one that actually runs on a Game Boy. But I just got the ROM and emulated it. But I bought for that tracker and actually streamed it on Twitch as well. I'm so sad that
Isn't it something
Twitch,
like LD Jams or something like that?
LSDJ, yeah.
LSDJ.
Yes,
there we go.
LSDJ. I'm sad that Twitch doesn't allow you to keep videos for a long time, because I actually streamed all of that, and I would have loved to have that nowadays. But that was cool, and that because it was a new experience for me to do it on a tracker, I decided it deserved a Bandcamp release, and so I did the tracks that go in the game. I did piano arrangements of those tracks, and did a metal version of the boss battle as well. Which I think is still up on Bandcamp. So if that's something people want to hear, you can hear it there. And that wasn't paid, but I guess that was my first more serious video game thing where I was talking to a developer and we were talking about specifications into how are we implementing this, how does this work, and I didn't just do the music, I also did the sound design as well.
Okay.
I didn't implement then, but was already learning how to do that as well.
Was the sound design also tracked, or did you do that in another way?
No, it was mixed. So I was getting some cool sounds from there, but I would just manipulate it in the DAW. Like I exported a few samples that I got out of it, programmed a few things in the tracker, got it into the DAW, and then just did whatever I wanted to do, essentially.
Cool.
Yeah. Trackers are extremely fun, but they take a lot of time, at least for me, to do something. Unless you're someone like Jake Kaufman. Do you know who Jake Kaufman is?
Yeah, I know Jake Kaufman. I really love and adore his music, especially Shovel Knight. He did an amazing work.
Yeah. I love everything he does. I think my favorite thing out of his is Shantae. I think that soundtrack is near perfect. And I've seen a few streams of him doing it on, I think it's Family Tracker. I think he did Shovel Knight on Family Tracker, did he not? I think so. Yeah.
Most of his tracks that he does is usually tracked.
Yeah. And the way
which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and he works so fast. He is a musical theory genius because he does it like on the fly. I am not that kind of guy. I am not built like that. I would love to, but
built different.
But he's so impressive, man. And that he is definitely one of my most modern references and inspirations in making music, because he's able to do things that are very catchy, earworm all day kind of thing, and he does it with the most
simplest things.
I don't want to say basic because Family Tracker is complex, but it's the simplest kind of tool. And here we are thinking about, I don't know, I want to get this EQ or compressor to have things hit this way, and here we are, all of us trying to make something, trying to go and replace that knowledge with tools that don't do that job, and he does it with one tool. And I think that's impressive.
It is really impressive. It's absolutely bonkers to me that he works so well with them, and it's not like every now and then he creates something magical. Like, it could happen, that's usually what happens, but like every time he releases something new, it's like, this is my new drug now.
He's very consistent at at expressing his vocabulary, and that's what I find so inspirational about.
That's very beautifully said.
Yeah. And you should have him on. I don't know if you.
I would love to have him on, but it's always so crazy, like getting these, to me, god legends of people. I have my own as well that I really would like to have. So I'm just excited, and I'll try to just get this as interesting as possible with the podcast, so they will come to me one day. Or I will have the courage to write to them. It's like, hey.
Are you comfortable sharing one you'd like to have on your podcast? I'm just curious.
Danny Baranovsky is one of mine that I really love. I love and adore the Crypt of the Necrodancer OST and some older work that he did. So I would love to have him on. I actually reached out to the developers, Brace Games, in order to have Rift of the Necrodancer, try to get Danny on that one because it's releasing now in January.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, you just gotta put it out there, put out some feelers.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. But getting back to the paid work credits thing.
Exactly. So we can speed through a little bit what we have here in order to reach the final point of today's game as well.
Yeah, for sure. So, along the line, I've done a lot of voice editing work. For example, I did editing work for Arcade Spirits. I did editing work for a great friend of mine's game named Inkbound, Jordan Chin. I love him, and he needed some help there as well. Did recorded guitars for Whisker Squadron as well, for my friend Shell. Also did some sound design for cutscenes on the Tartarus Key. So I've done a whole bunch of different audio things in a bunch of different titles. But I guess that Constance, honestly, is the one where I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing, which is music. And not only music, honestly, I'm doing music, sound design, and I'm implementing as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I guess that's almost a director.
Yeah,
Kinda,
audio
kind of
director, but also the audio guy.
Yeah. I would not call myself the other director just because the vision is so well defined by Sebastian, who is the game director, and that's his idea, that's his vision. So we talk a lot about what is the game supposed to sound like, and from the tiniest to the micro to the macro, right? So what does this one thing need to sound? But what is the overall vision of Constance? Actually, just before I got into this podcast with you, we just had a little meeting of some of the latest work that I need to get done for an area, and what we talk about is, hey, is this the right direction? Is this feeling right? Is this the right vibe? Because I like to communicate often and see what's happening. And that's how we work. So we weren't doing this all the time, but now we've decided to lock in that we always have this one meeting per week that doesn't move, and we get that time together to talk about things. I show you my work, we talk about it, we see what's working, what's not working. And I'm really excited about Constance because I am doing all of these things, but also because it's a really cool game done by really cool people. I love every single person in the team, and everyone's doing such a great job. I'm at a loss of words when it comes to describing the experience for me, because it's exactly what I want to be doing with my life.
And hopefully I'm gonna help you paint in those words a little bit during this episode as well. So we will see what will happen with this craziness with the game of Constance. So in the last episode, I did mispronounce the name a little bit. I think I said Cadence, and I'm very sorry for that. This is Constance.
It's okay.
And
it's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry. Quick note about that. So my girlfriend, she always says Celeste instead of Constance, and then I'm always, oh my god, do you do it on purpose? I know she doesn't do it on purpose. It's just it just comes out, and I'm like, oh my god, do you do it on purpose? And now her friends also started doing the same thing, and it feels like it's spreading. Everyone,
it's like a virus now.
Yeah, it feels like there's like this, hidden amorphous cloud going around the world saying, it's Celeste, not Constance. It's so it's okay. I've gotten used to it, but it seems to be a thing, and I think it will keep happening.
But I came with something new at least.
Yeah. No, at least that. I think that's way better than saying I'm
could be a
this other
translation thing. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Because then I'm just overstepping other people's work, right? Like it's not. At least make it original. I like that. Yeah, that was a good way out, Chris.
Yeah, definitely. So in order to dive in a little bit, for people who have not played the demo that is out on Constance, so the game is developed by the German studio BTF Games, and the game is still in development and does have a planned release in the fourth quarter of 2025, so this year. And as I said, there is a demo available for this game. And from what I understand, the game is only so far planned to be released on PC and Steam. Is there anything I've missed, considering if they're planning anything else that you might say?
So I am not up to those decisions at the moment, because we've just been focusing on the PC releases. I know that internally we've talked about other things, but at this point, there's no confirmation of anything. So for sure, PC. And then we'll see
the rest.
What happens? Yeah, because we're a small team, and production takes a long time. We've been doing this for quite some time now, and in order for us to feel good about what will come out later this year, it means that we need to keep the scope as tight as possible.
Definitely,
and that means making some choices that might not be so comfortable, but that's just the reality of it. And considering those constraints, I think we've been doing a good job.
Yeah, and it's a good start as well, considering starting out on PC. So many people has a PC today as well. Yeah. And before we dive into the first, let me just explain the quick elevator pitch for Constance. So Constance is a 2D hand-drawn action-adventure platforming game featuring a paintbrush-wielding artist. You strive to escape this colorful world that is decaying because of corruption, all created by your own declining mental health. And playing this demo, it doesn't really explain all these things. So these are just what is explained on the Steam page. So I've been copy-pasting a little bit, but adding my own little twist to the words.
You did a great job. Thank you.
Awesome. But in order to get this episode going and started with the music, we're going to listen to the trailer track that basically the music everybody is able to hear listening in on the trailer that is out there in the cyberspace. So first track out, trailer from the game Constance. There we have the trailer music from the game Constance. I'm not going to say the game Constance all the time, every time we're listening on a track here.
Yeah.
But yeah, for everybody who's listening in on this episode as their first amazing episode of the Gameable audio, every time we're listening in on one of these tracks, I will have a section called Emotion, which is basically me sitting down in my room here, leaning back in my chair, closing down my eyes, and I listen to this specific track over and over again until I'm starting feeling things. And also, just to have this said, I did play through the full demo as well before I was listening in on these tracks as well. So they might have some connection in why I felt like I did. We don't know. It's going to be interesting always to go through. So, my emotion for the trailer music here starts out with this dreamlike xylophone. It gives me this visual of spinning toys that are hanging over a newborn child. This is also what kind of closes the track as well. Like a start and an ending. Right after this dreamlike start, you're getting tossed straight into the adventure here. The tones that gives a sense of moving forward to something one person likes. You like the eagerness to get to this point or place. The track here, it is short, it is sweet, and it gives a good intention for what the trailer graphics does. And I really like this. So what was the initial idea for this track?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. That's
Was it on spot? Was this something you wanted to go for?
No, for sure. And that's like first of all, it's a new experience for me to have people talking about my music. So I'm first of all, I'm just grateful for that. And secondly, it's a very interesting thing to hear you describe it in ways that me and Sebastian, for example, have talked about in regards to this trailer. Because this trailer, what we wanted to do is to have a very distinct progression from, you have Constance in the beginning, kind of, going into her own world and that being this sort of negative space, and we kind of dreamy, but at the same time we don't understand what that is. It's not, you'll understand later when you play the game, but we tease towards what that weird world might be. So it's sort of mysterious, kind of suspenseful in the beginning, but then like you said, hey, but there's this eagerness to start this adventure. So it's very adventure-like when we get in. So I give you this moment to just kind of get into it and, nod along with what might be happening now. And we know that this, every adventure has a beginning, a middle, and end. And it does mean that this will keep, the stakes will keep growing and growing and growing up to a climax. So that's what I've tried to do with this trailer piece, where we go from the lowest dynamic level to the highest dynamic level, considering our instrumentation and our usual arrangements for the game. So that was what we tried to do, and we anchored it with the music boxes, motifs, both in the beginning and in the end. So that's how you put it how you described it is very accurate and how we thought about it. So I'm really glad that comes through, right? So at least in intention, we thought of it well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of like how you like you're talking about progression, because this is something happening in the trailer as well. Because in the beginning of the trailer, it's more like showing off this space you're moving around in, because it's a lot of just movement parts, cutting, moving. And when it's getting a more of the crescendo, the higher dynamic part of this with all the layers and so on, that's when you get more into the fighting and puzzling and things going on, that things that kind of becomes problematic for the player.
Yeah. And that's essentially the explaining to players what will the loop kind of be, right? And also just to showcase the amazing art that this game has and the animations. And I'm saying this not because it's a game I'm working on. I am a legit fan of all of the artists in Constance. I think it looks great.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, and quite honestly, it is a unique selling point of the game, the fact that it does look like this. So we also want to make sure that things are pleasant to look at, that things are visually stunning. And what I'm trying to do most of the times is just keep up with that and making sure that I am supporting, those pieces, those artistic pieces, be it the actual environments or be it the animations, whatever it might be, everything art. I'm just trying my best to support that with what I'm doing and making sure that the vibe is correct, making sure that we are communicating well throughout it. Because again, I'm not doing just the music, I'm also doing the sound design. And these have very big roles in communicating game states and game vibes. So that's all I'm trying to do. I'm making sure that things match up, and more than giving you, a hummable melody or a really cool moment or whatever that might be, if that is not aligning with the art, then I feel like I've failed. So I'm just doing my best to align with the art and make sure that both of them say something more than they do individually.
So are you trying to correlate them together to work in tandem with each other, or are you trying to find a little bit more contrast to them music-wise?
It depends.
So it depends a little bit on what you're after.
Yeah, we are trying to... And again, I attribute this to Sebastian's strong vision on this. He lets me know at each point of the game, what are we trying to communicate? Like what's happening in terms of the overarching storytelling, and letting me know, okay, in this part, this happened, so it means X, Y, Z. So that means that the music needs to be this. So I would love to give you a blanket statement or a blanket answer of, yes, I'm always doing exactly what the art is doing, but maybe that's like the communication there, in order to be complementary, sometimes it can't be expressing the same thing. Like,
no, I understand.
Yeah,
I really like that answer as well, because it gives a little bit more perspective. I like to answer a little bit with questions that sound a little bit more black and white than they actually are, because I always like to hear the composer talk a little bit about how they express and what's important, because I think those are like the really important things when it comes to composition. It's not always black and white, because there's so much gut feeling, for example, sometimes, and sometimes it just really needs to correlate with something and to have the best kind of view in it, while other places it really needs to be like a magnetic antipole on it to just pull away in order to shine the best. And it's not always the easiest. What works for one game doesn't necessarily work for another game either. So this is usually why people can talk about like, oh, this looks like this, but it doesn't have the same kind of output in music or art or whatever. But that's because it might have not been a typical style that person liked specifically, but if everything kind of correlates, it just could be something different. And being different is not bad in any sort of way. It's just being different is good in its own way. But depending on if you're interested to a large crowd of people or not, that can theoretically make a difference. No, for sure. And I think a good example of that, and I can use Constance as an example because it isn't out, so people won't recognize. But, any of the Dark Souls games, you have a lot of bosses that have epic
humongous orchestrations, and it's it's turned up, it's cranked up to 11, right? But then you also have those bosses that are really in level, they're the same kind of intensity, and it's just a very lowly dynamic piano playing or something like that, right? And it's about the storytelling, right? So you might have the exact same thing, but what are you trying to communicate? So that's
exactly
what we're at least having in mind when we're doing Constance.
I love that. I love that. If we're moving back a little bit here, we just dove straight into these things, and I love that. But I want to go back a little bit. When you started getting into contact with the team for Constance, how was the initial plan from the get-go there? Was it you who contacted them, or did they hear about your work and contacted you?
Yeah. So the game designer, Edgar, he is a friend of mine who worked with me on previous projects. So he was already in the project when they had the need to start getting someone for the audio. So they were already in conversations with other people when Edgar told me, hey, there's, people are starting to do some tests for this. Would you like to try? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Let's do that. So long story short, I did the tests. I ended up getting this gig, and we started running. So in this case, I got this gig because quite fortunately, I have good friends that think of me when they're working on something cool, and that's how it got there. So all of the networking that we talked about earlier, right? That I did in the local scene, because that's actually Edgar worked with me at the last customer support job that we were.
Oh.
We didn't really talk much then because we were in different shifts. But that's how we met, actually, and we were able to maintain contact throughout the years. So
that is great
for over a decade now.
Yeah, and it's so much fun having connections, and sometimes even with these connections, even if you don't really have a necessarily contact all the time, these things can just pop up out of nowhere. It's like, hey, I know you. I remember you doing some music, right? Are you still doing music? It's like, yeah, I do. We need music for our game.
Yeah,
like, whoa, and I just need a job right now.
Yeah. Actually, in that time, I think I was actually super busy, and it was really hard for me to get a sample in, to get a test in. And I don't remember the details. I just remember it being a very chaotic time. But I somehow
it's just a blur.
I somehow pulled through, and I'm very grateful that I did. And it just goes to show that you also need to be ready to jump at things, and sometimes it's not at the most convenient of times. And there's a level of effort there, there's a level of pushing there that sometimes, when it comes to making a living out of, and I usually say audio, I don't even say music per se, just audio in general, these opportunities come, they don't just line up hey, this week I'm going to be contacted by this guy, and it's going to take exactly 1 month and a half. And then 1 week before that wraps, another guy will contact me and I'll have it. That doesn't happen, right? There's going to be a lot of overlap. And in my case, because I do all of these different audio things, it means that I'm doing things simultaneously, concurrently. And the overlaps sometimes are so hard to manage.
Okay.
And I do remember that when I started Constance, that was a very difficult overlap, specifically.
Oh. How do you usually tend to handle these overlaps? Is it just pure grit? It's I'm getting through this. Or are you structuring things in order to handle them better now?
That's an amazing question. I think I could be better at handling those overlaps, if I'm honest. I think when I was younger, and for the record, I'm 35 now. But when I was younger, I would be able to pull all-nighters and be okay. Nowadays, if I do an all-nighter, I die.
And we can clearly say you're not dead yet, so you haven't pulled an all-nighter in a long time then, I guess.
So I avoid those. And I do my best at communicating expectations. Sometimes I don't do so well at communicating those. Other times, maybe I do them decently enough, but that's what I practice doing, at least. I try and say, hey, I know you wanted this by now, but hey, the milestone is actually a little bit further away. Could we push this to another date? Or yeah, I am doing my best to keep things organized and tidy. And that means, for example, on my day-to-day, trying to stop at a certain time. I try not to work beyond 6 p.m., but quite honestly, that's really hard for me because I love what I'm doing. I love doing this, and I want to, you know what I mean?
It is a hazard for everybody who works with something they're passionate about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and not only that, I do have a lot of things to do. So because I have a lot of things to manage, when I try and plan my week on Sundays, and I try and lay out my whole week. But then I have so many moving parts with different clients where one thing suddenly cannot be done there, needs to go somewhere else. So there's a lot of flexibility going on. And that means that sometimes it's just easier for me to work a little bit more one day. And then the other day I might take it a little bit slower or start later or whatever that might be. So that's a great question. And I don't have one good answer for it. I would say that it's a long... like a lifetime's worth of attempting to be organized.
Yeah. I mean, it's a learning experience over time as well. Not everybody is super structured from the get-go and have that sort of discipline. These things take time to get into. And I'm not just saying like it's going to take a half a year. These things can take like 5-10 years for some people as well. Yeah. Just getting that structure. And sometimes things change on the fly as well, which needs restructuring in order to find that kind of Zen mode for yourself. Yeah,
and that's like, there's no, I mean, nowadays we live in the age of everything has a course, right? But there's not a lot of, or at least when I was starting, there wasn't a lot of information, or I didn't know. Actually, I don't think I knew any freelancers when I started.
Okay.
So I didn't even have that structure of how do you structure your day? How do you organize yourself? I think nowadays it's way easier to find that sort of information. But yeah, it's still difficult to understand what you need because every person's different. You know, there's people that like blocking their calendar full and they work well.
Yeah.
But there's other people that are just like, I just need a post-it on my desk and I'll do it. You know, other people need, you know, external accountability. Hey, I need someone to come here and co-work with me, or I need to go somewhere to co-work with them. So there's all of these different options, and it takes a long time to understand how you really are the most efficient, because we're all very different in that regard.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's time for us to move on to the next track. To get a little bit calmer, I guess. Just find our little Zen mode, right?
Let's do it. Yeah.
So the next track we're going to listen to is a track named Vaults. Fading out the calmness of Vaults, and my emotion for this one, like I said, a calm track, but it does give off this little bit of melancholy to it, a sadness, like you've lost something. I got, like, this track, it really grasped around my heart while I was listening to it, and the more I listened to this track, the sadder I got. That loss got bigger and stronger. And this track is played in the main menu of the demo, but also the second area of this game, which was a little bit confusing to me to some extent due to the fact that it brings a little bit of glimpse of hope to it. So I would like to hear a little bit about the progression on this one. It's going to be interesting, I bet.
Yeah. So a few things right from the get-go, which is I didn't tell you this before sending the samples, but these names are just attached to the area, which they are right now. So the final names on the actual soundtrack will differ. So look
these are
out for
work in
that.
progress names.
Yes. And quite honestly, even the compositions themselves might change.
Yep. Okay.
Because, for example, what we just heard now, the Vaults one, is one of the... Was it the first track I did for Constance?
Okay.
I don't quite recall, but definitely one of the earliest. One of the earliest ones I've done. Yeah,
now that you're saying that it's such an early track that you started working on, was this also due to the fact, in this case, I can see in the demo, it's in the main menu and the second area. Was that the initial idea for this track as well, for menu and an area, or was it more drawn towards an area from the get-go?
Definitely towards the area. So the main menu right now, quite honestly, what we're doing is we'll just one of the tracks of an actual level be put in the main menu for now, because the main menu track, that will be something different that we are cooking up, and we know what we want there, and we are still in conversations of how we want it to be there, because we do want to make something exciting and engaging in the main menu. But again, production times are tight, so we need to understand whether something like that is to be done or not to be done. But the menu will have its own track that is not shared with the rest of the world. Yep. And for the vaults, I guess, it was one of the earliest tracks, and it was just me trying to kind of grab the, a musical footing of what this game means, and specifically this area, right? So this is one of the earliest areas as well. And for us, first of all, there's the location aspect of it, right? Like you're in these sort of caverns. There's like old structures in there. You don't really understand why are there structures inside the cavern. Like it looks like a dwarven fortress or something like that. And it's just really confusing to be there because you don't understand where you are. And I guess I just really wanted to communicate that sensation of confusion, but also have a little glimpse of hope, right? Like, I don't want you to feel like, we mentioned Dark Souls earlier. Like, I don't want you to feel like you're in a Dark Souls game. I don't want you to feel despair. I just want to instill some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for here? I guess I want you to feel like you don't belong in this place. And that if you want to, you're able to get out. And that's what I'm trying to communicate here. So, as you've heard, the track is very bare bones, right? Yeah. It's essentially just a cello doing these textures while there's a piano melody line coming on top. And I made sure to leave a lot of space for this track in comparison to other tracks, which are well more arranged, orchestrated, and more instruments.
Yeah, we're going to hear a little bit about these in comparison to the other tracks we're listening to this episode as well. Yeah, even with the trailer one that we've already heard, right? Like it's way more bare bones. And yeah, that's what I wanted to instill. Like it's this kind of weird world. You don't know, like it's in a cave. So lots of reverb there as well. So that's another thing that I always try and communicate with my music as well, is if I am using effects in my instruments, I want them to match in some shape or form where they're being triggered, right? In this case, we're in a cavern. So I did want it to sound quite reverberant. And if I am able to make those decisions, I feel very happy. I don't know if the player actually feels that too much or too, like, I'm not quite sure on the reception of the player to these decisions. But quite honestly, although I have a bachelor's in sound, I am not formed in music. So my background is not music. So I'm self-taught in that area. And for me, making musical decisions is very intuitive. So I don't think in a term of, I'm going to use this scale and use these notes. And now I'm going to, like, that way of looking at music is very foreign to me. I usually just, I'm in my desk right now. I have my MIDI controller in front of me. I load a patch and I need to feel it out. And I have it, like, I have access to the build, right? I might be in the level.
and I'm just playing around, and there will be a time where something just clicks, and I don't know why that is. I record that, and then I start there. So for this one, I know that I was playing with the cello first. So I had this cello patch from a library, and I was just fooling around with it, and then these textures came in where it just feels like, you know, when a guitar feedbacks, it felt like a guitar feedbacked. And that just sounded so appealing to me. Even though it's not quite the same tone, it does go there sometimes. Like it goes, right?
It's kind of same, but different.
Yeah. And it felt scratchy in a way that I liked. And I just felt like that conveyed the emotion of foreignness. Is foreignness a word? I don't know. English is not my first language. Yeah. So, yeah, that foreign feeling was very important to me. And that's where I started. And then I thought, hey, this is it. This is this track. And then I grabbed a piano and started just improvising on top of that, of those textures. And this is a song. And I felt like, this is hard for me, by the way. I am usually the guy that overdoes things. Like I put too many things in a track. But for some reason, when I was doing vaults, I felt, no, I only need these two instruments. This is enough. It fits.
But is it intended that you wanted the player who listen in on this adds the extra to it then? Because like you're saying, you're adding this kind of minimalistic touch on it, and you try to have the environment speak for the music.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure if I want to or not. I would say that at this moment, and because it was one of the earliest tracks, I think I just wanted to make something that felt authentic to where Constance is at that point of the game. And using stuff like, you know, more reverb on these instruments and making more space by manipulating those reverbs on this track, if that's something that players will catch on or not, I'm not really concerned about that, as long as they feel like they're like this fits.
Yeah.
Because, you know, even I am talking about it and I'm not being completely articulate about it. So I would never expect a player to be able to catch on things. Players don't have to know about things at all, as long as they feel it. And that's ultimately what I'm trying to do.
Because music is, in the end, subjective as well.
Yeah.
Everybody feels different. You're talking a little bit about foreign, being somewhere you're not belonging to. Yeah. And I was talking about sadness and loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
So already here we're having differences, and I like these are the things that kind of makes it interesting in discussion as well.
Yeah, and you know, just about your perspective, those are legitimate as well, because I can't really go into detail about what's going on with Constance at that time, but what I can say is feelings of sadness and loss at that time are definitely a thing. So I might have tried to convey something a little bit different, but it still matches all of these other things that are relevant to the arc of the story at that time.
Yeah. Considering one thing that I haven't really fully understood it. A lot of people talk about metroidvanias where you need to backtrack and so on, but for this they pointed out it as a 2D hand-drawn action adventure game. So I'm really not necessarily sure if it is a Metroidvania type of game in the end.
It is.
Is that something? Okay, it is.
Yeah, okay. I can confirm it is. Yeah.
Then we have that confirmed on the podcast.
Yeah.
No, because I was a little bit unsure. In the demo, of course, you're free to walk from screen to screen and so on, but I was a little bit unsure if there's any point of returning and so on. But then we know that there might be backtracking reasons, etc.
Yep. There definitely is. I will refrain talking too much about it because I am so focused on the audio part of things. I don't know which parts I can talk about and I cannot.
Then we're getting a hole there. We don't want you to break any NDAs or anything.
No,
as
it's
well,
fine.
So
no, it's fine because we have, we've already showed this game multiple times. We've talked to many people, and something that I can definitely share is I think the reason you might not have seen the Metroidvania in a description. I'm not quite sure where you got it, but probably from Steam or something like that.
Yeah,
I think
correct.
the reason for that was we were, with the demos, we were not thinking about the Metroidvania aspect just yet. And we didn't know from the beginning that it was going to be a Metroidvania, but that wasn't being expressed at the time.
Okay.
And now we are finally, internally we do have those aspects already in, but for players playing the demo, they don't feel the Metroidvania just yet. Yeah.
No, I can understand a little bit because there were still like doors that were locked saying like it's not in the demo.
Not
so
here.
I understand that kind of part.
yeah, exactly.
But I understand because you're still kind of moving around and it kind of, the whole circle is there. Let's just say it, leave it like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's tough because we know things that people don't know. And that means that for us to be flexible in doing certain things, we can't let people know exactly how things are going at this moment. That's essentially
I understand fully as well. Because sometimes the story-wise or what you're experiencing and so on can have such an impact, and you kind of want to save that impact for the actual full game in the end as well.
Yeah.
So I fully understand that. The only thing I can kind of lean on in understanding is from what I've played and what basically written in the description of the game on the Steam page.
Yeah.
So for me, considering you're saying it has a fitting, for me thinking about her own declining mental health and talking about loss, could be someone dear or just herself. She doesn't really see the former of herself anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm really getting excited for just the game story here and the aspect of it.
I like your description better. I'm stealing it.
And it's all. I'll send everything. You can get it to the team. Yeah. I've actually been getting returns from some composer when I'm releasing an album, I want you to review it first so we can add it as a... I was like, I love that idea. It's so much fun.
Yeah, you can carve a place in the industry for yourself as a video game soundtrack reviewer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do it. I'll send you my stuff for sure.
Moving on this, we're soon going to listen to the next track as well, but I kind of want to still add in one more question before we can dive in. I guess this is going to be a little bit a bigger one as well as an answer, but
sure.
Usually when you're getting into a soundtrack and getting a little bit of an understanding, we talked a little bit about the understanding when you started working on this one.
Yeah.
Did you have a full, better vision of the game and what they were after? And you started to kind of envelop and develop a little bit more of an understanding of the soundtrack, or did you just go into this one and try to find a core of the game through this track?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, so actually something I haven't shared yet is when we started working, one of the things that I started doing is, the main motifs that you hear on the trailer, so the main melody that you hear on the trailer, my first task was we need to find those motifs. So in the beginning, I did some concepts. Okay, what do you think about this one? What do you think about that one? And we got to what you hear on the trailer. This is Constance, right? And for that, I not speaking a little bit more on the music aspect of things. I really wanted to make it simple. I really wanted to have people be able to hum it, right? I didn't want to make it overly complex. I want to make everyone listen to this and access it, essentially.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times some music is great and sounds amazing, but it's hard to have an understanding of it. So I was trying to make something that is accessible. And from there, right, so understanding what the theme is, what the main motif is, I can now, out of that, understand what the rest of the soundtrack is, right? Kind of like, artists do concepts to understand what an environment will look like, a character will look like, whatever that might be, right? So I did my own musical concept to try and understand, what's the instrumentation like for this? What sort of arrangements do I like to do? What are the rhythms? Stuff like that. So we started there, and that still affects all of my music work that I've done and what I'm still doing and am still yet to do for the remaining this year. But that's how the vision got started. And it's an ever-evolving vision, because I was speaking with a friend not long ago about how, it's curious that when you finally start feeling what the game really is about, that's when the project starts kind of wrapping up. So I feel like I'm on the cusp of, I understand exactly what Constance is and needs.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that will hit by the time I need to wrap everything up.
Yeah.
So let's say that's the 100%. I would say that right now I'm at like 80%, more or less.
Okay.
And somewhere in the summer, I'll hit that 100%, and it'll be like, we're wrapping up for release in Q4. And yeah, and that's just the way it is, because, and again, tying it up with the whole freelancer thing, because I do other things at the same time I'm working on this game, it means that I can't just take, 20, a work week just to focus on Constance. I need to focus on Constance for a bit, then do other things, then do some other thing, get back to Constance, then this.
Always working on a parallel with them.
Yeah, so it takes it's definitely a skill being able to keep in mind what the aesthetic is for all of your projects, right? Yeah, I just thought I'd throw in that consideration, because I feel like if other music professionals are listening to this, and if they need to do the similar thing, be warned that it is very difficult to, do two different projects with two different vibes in the same day, for example. So that means going back to organization, which we were talking a little bit earlier, it does mean that you also need to keep that in mind when you're organizing your week, right? Like maybe you have the ability to do 3 tracks in a day or 3 different concepts in a day, but do you have the ability to actually separate them as 3 different vibes? Like, can you do a rock track in the morning, then, by the afternoon do, I don't know, a hip hop track, and then at the end of the day, you're doing an ambient track? You know what I mean? Like, I'm exaggerating the how many tracks you do in a day. But you need some time to get into the zone. Yeah. And what keeps me grounded to that zone is having those earlier concepts and understanding, we've talked about this. I don't have to guess. We've talked about this. This is what we were trying to do, and it's already locked, right? So taking the subjectivity out of this as much as I possibly can, so that I can insert subjectivity creatively, and not because I'm lost in my own creative process. Yeah?
Interesting. Oh, there are so many more questions as well, but we need to keep this podcast going as well. But I've noted down some that we're going to keep talking about after listening to the next song as well.
All good.
So much interesting going on. So next track that we're going to listen to, at least, is the track called Foundry. Fading Out, Foundry. Now, this was a really interesting track. My emotion for this one, a curious track. Layers of instrument that question and answer each other, then grows together. About 1 minute in, this drop kind of comes in from the fullness, and that one is kind of answered by one of the string instruments. And just like this small second, maybe it's like 1 or 2 seconds, it kind of instantly moved me to the world of hobbits. But then the piano comes in, and it becomes playful, while the violin kind of creates this spark of interest. Inspiration, I would say. And the tracks starts off with this build-up over time, and I kind of like this track as it kind of feels different, but yet familiar. I did not necessarily get like the correct vibe from listening to this music from this area that this is played in, but while playing it, it really felt very suitable nonetheless.
Yeah.
So I would like to hear a little bit on the thought process here. Because just to paint the picture for everybody listening in, where this track is placed is the first region of this demo. It is dark, it's green, it's kind of damp. You see roots in the background, and you see it kind of feels like a dumpster. You see a lot of trash just laying around on this one. So I would love to hear a little bit of the thought process making this track.
Yeah. So the absolute quickest description I can make for this track, I think, can be around 2 or 3 words, which is automation meets inspiration. And yeah, because
what
in this
do you
area,
mean by that?
Yeah.
So we get a little bit better picture.
Yeah. So in this area, like you've played, you see a lot of robots, right? And you see a lot of technology, a lot of automatons, a lot of machinery, and mechanical machinery, right? So not digital, newer things, so mechanical things. And that's why for the rhythm of this track, you always have like this emphasis on the specific rhythm throughout of the track. And that's me trying... Yeah, exactly. So that's me just trying to communicate the aspects of automation, of automatons, and machinery through a small ensemble, right? So it starts with the strings, then it goes to the brass, and then at the 1 minute mark, like you said, just comes a solo violin, which is just like, let's break with this stiffness and this rigidity and this automation because we're fluid, right? So Constance is fluid, and that's what I'm trying to communicate there. It's Constance coming into contact with her own rigidity, her own processes of automating things in her mind, but she wants to break it, right? Like, this is something that Sebastian and I also talk about, which is we are always trying to instill hopefulness in every single track that I do. So even if the situation is dire, we still want you to feel like you can get out of it. There's always a way out. You're not supposed to, again, compared to the Dark Souls thing, you're not supposed to feel despaired. You're always supposed to feel like there's a way out. I don't know what it is, but if I stick around, I'll find it. And that's what I've done, what I'm trying to do with this track, right? There's this rigidity, and we do our best to fight it and not even completely throw it away. Like, we embrace the fact that we have these structures, but we can also make it beautiful, right? If you use it as a structure and then find a way to make the best out of it.
I really like the concept that you're utilizing the automation, that you're using the same kind of vibe for a longer period of time. Because usually when people are talking about automation, it usually tends to go, I would say, in an overextent of describing it, it usually tends to go to like an industrial part of it, especially when you're talking about robots and machinery to that extent. So I really like that it felt so organic, so classical set, which kind of also fits the vibe of Constance being this painter, having the classical vibe to it.
Yeah,
I'm guessing that's the most important thing about this overarching understanding of the soundtrack, that you need to have this kind of anchor in classical music, right?
Yeah. So I am trying to not make it, a fully ensemble, huge orchestra. So that's not where I'm trying to go. I'm trying to make smaller ensembles, use a lot of soloists as well. That's the band for Constance, right?
Yeah.
And, I do this all in my computer, via samples. I do record a few things here and there. But I try and keep my band intact. throughout the soundtrack. So that's how I'm trying to be cohesive through it all. Because even though we just heard the Vaults one, right? And it does seem it's not like from the same band, but imagine if you were seeing this band and the cellist would just come forward, and the piano player would be there, but the cellist would be running through a few pedals and just doing something really weird. But then he would take those out, go back to his position, and now we could play the Foundry, right? So I have this vision as well of if this were ever to be, and by this I don't mean that I want this played live or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to go for the cohesion aspect of this. If this were to be a concert, would this make sense? So I do my best to only add instrumentation and sounds and textures that would make sense for a band to play. And they can be digital, but it would be one person coming in with a sampler and triggering them out or something like that. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to make this as cohesive as it possibly can be through a band perspective or an ensemble perspective. Let's put it like that.
And now I just want to hear, like, I want it by a small ensemble on a boat, preferably Titanic 2.
No, then everyone will die. No, I wish them the best.
But it will be popular. Everybody remembers them.
True. Not all artists can say that, right?
Not everybody, no. They died for what they loved.
True.
Bringing inspiration. But no, but one thing, like I said before we listened to the Foundry here, I said that I noted down some questions here. And considering that you're not classically trained, having all this musical theory and so on, you're self-taught about this. Did you have any references when you moved into the game of Constance, or how was it there?
Yeah, good question. I am thinking about it. I think I got... Yeah, I think most of my references were from Breath of the Wild and Hollow Knight. Okay. And those are two very, I would say, very easy references to attach here. Yeah, I would say that. And then I guess I'm bringing a lot of my own taste into this. I definitely have a very sweet spot for, quite honestly, anything that comes out of Japanese media. So Japanese video games and Japanese animation and stuff like that. So, and in those scenarios, you get a lot of smaller ensembles as well being played. Because, like, for example, nowadays animes do have very big orchestras, but back in the 90s, 2000s, yes, you would get some orchestrations there, but the ensembles were smaller and it was a drier sound. So that's kind of the sound I want to be kind of mimicking. And that's just a personal taste thing that I'm bringing to this. And I guess when it comes to references, Sebastian is very fluid with it. He does send me things, but at the end of the day, and I really appreciate that about him, he just trusts me to do something that feels appropriate. And we'll end up always talking about it. I've gotten rejected tracks. Everyone gets rejected tracks. But of course. It's about, getting it in, talking about it. Hey, this isn't working because A, B, C, D. And then trying to figure out, okay, but what will work? And
exactly
after we have that conversation, it's references start being
less important, I guess.
Yeah, because now you're already in the thick of it, and you're trying to understand, okay, this one thing you did was really interesting, but the fact that it's around all of these other things isn't working, so take this one thing, and maybe take that one thing, and remember that last track where you did that was good, so why not do it here as well? And so it comes to a point where you're basically assembling a puzzle, I think. Yeah. Right? Talking about the vision and the direction of things. So... Yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question, does it?
It kind of touches on the question. It kind of touches a little bit on my other question as well. Because, like we already know here, you're working on parallel with other projects as well. considering how you kind of work fluently as well, surrounding references, etc., especially when you're noting down these, like, yeah, this is a structure of this. Maybe we need to take away some layers. Maybe we need to add some layers and so on. But do you usually tend to get any ideas from other projects on how they work? So you can take either like a reference from another project that you worked on. It's like, oh, I kind of learned this from this project because I was listening to a reference I haven't heard before, etc. Or you got a spark of inspiration that really sparked for one project, and then you just take it over to the next project. It's like, oh.
Yeah, that's a good
bigger
question.
question.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just thinking about it, and I think it's a great question, but I think it's a very short answer. I don't think I do that.
Okay.
Direction-wise, I do it tech/organizationally wise. So,
okay,
you know what I mean? Like if I organized,
so framework,
more of the foundation, the structural pieces of it. Like for example, coming into this new year, I just built a new template in my DAW where it's like it's the work of many years that now got into making this template the workflow that I love in this one template, and I'm able in it to do many very different things. And so, for example, starting this year, one of the things I've done with Constance is I'm bringing all of the tracks into this new template, and I am making sure that now every single song meets this template. And for example, the samples that you have now, they're not in this template at all. So I am now putting them into this new template. And I got that because I worked on this other project that had really tight turnarounds, and I just needed to be very efficient. And I did it on the fly. And then I was like, wait, this worked really well. So let me get this in all of the projects. So now I took my time to build it up in a way that made sense and could fit any project. And now I'm putting all of my projects in that template. And now I feel like I can not so much compose quicker, but in latter stages, in terms of mixing and mastering it, I'm able to do it way quicker now. Or not have as many obstacles now. So it's not so much about the direction of things and the creativity of things. It's more about streamlining the processes that allow me to be as creative as I can, right? And that I do steal from other projects. I don't think... I'm thinking about it, but the more I think about it, I don't think I I steal creatively from other projects.
Yeah. Because that usually be because the projects themselves might not be relatable to each other, like we were talking about having rock and roll and hip hop, for example.
Yeah. If it's completely different things, it's very hard to get that.
Considering also a little bit on this specific track, you have a little bit more of the layers together with the instruments and so on, and it feels like the instruments plays their own part. We were talking a little bit about motifs when we were talking about the trailer music, so on. Is there any specific motif that kind of follows through all the tracks or throughout the game that kind of follows Constance as a character?
Yeah, so we are making leitmotifs. And essentially what you hear on the trailer is one of them, right? And that's something that you will hear along the game in many different shapes, sizes, forms, however you want to describe it. And that goes along with the cohesion aspect that we were talking earlier, right? So I'm trying as best as I can to make sure that I not only have this cohesion in terms of instrumentation and arrangement and sound aesthetics and all of that, but making sure that if we have motifs that represent certain things, that I utilize them throughout the game and modulate them to feel appropriate in those moments. Yeah. So you will hear definitely the things you've heard on the trailer modulated around the game. Yeah,
that's all. That's really interesting. I love when they kind of do touch on subjects and so on in that sense. There's so many different takes on this. Sometimes the composers just want the music to spark and kind of give the environment an identity. And sometimes you want the music to give the character, like an enemy or the main character the players are playing, an identity. And other situations, there's maybe no main motif for the main character. Therefore, it only presents the environment and what you're experiencing because it's your journey, even if it's a character playing it in the game.
Yeah.
There's so many aspects.
There's not even a right way of doing it, right? Like it all depends on how you want to communicate, and that's what we are trying to do to the best of our abilities. Is how can we utilize, and not just music, by the way, but in everything related to the game, how can we utilize the things we've already done well, so we can reappropriate them in a fair and creatively conscious manner, so that the players will create more rapport with Constance, the game, their experience, their gameplay, all of that. Yeah.
And on the topic of experiencing and so on, I think it's time for us to get into the next track.
Sure.
Because this one is the most interesting one because it kind of sticks out.
Okay.
From the 5 tracks that we're going to listen to, at least in this episode.
For sure.
So let's dig into that one. It is called Aw King. Aw King, and as everybody can already tell, it sounded a little bit different from the rest of the tracks we'll listen to today. And my emotion for this one, this is a little bit of a longer one, so buckle up everybody, we're going in for a ride. This has a sense of drama above itself. Somehow it gave me flashbacks to the game of Henry Hatsworth and the Puzzling Adventure. I had to return to that soundtrack, and, well, it didn't have any tracks that kind of sounded like this, but somehow this track gave me the sense of sustainability from that game, and it was crazy to me. I love when music does that, however. But anyway, back to my emotion. The track comes with a sense of urgency, and with it some sort of, it is almost aggressive strokes on that cello, or is it violin? I'm a little bit unsure. It has this darker tone, so it feels like a cello to me. But the longer strokes, that kind of, it adds the drama to the track. The track, it feels really like a classic battle theme without having the high BPM going on for it. It's just sense of danger that it emits. And yeah, like I said here, this is the boss battle music in the demo. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah. No. I am processing your emotions, Chris. Yeah, I think it's... Yeah, this one was an interesting one to do because this was my first boss track in the project, and it took a while to get to this point because we didn't want to. Again, we wanted to do what I was sharing earlier. We always want you to feel hopeful, even on boss tracks, and making those sections is really important to us. Even on something that looks as menacing as the Aw King. And it's I'm guessing you played against him on this demo?
Yeah. I played through the full demo. It took me 25 minutes. Wink, wink, everybody. It's only 25 minutes.
Yeah. No, that was good. And
then I speedran it on a little bit less than 9 minutes.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, the All King looks really menacing, right? When compared to the rest of the world and the rest of the enemies that you have around. And it's
he's not elegant.
No, not at all, right? So even the sound design, he's very, very... Something that I tried to do there was just make him feel menacing. Not in a way where he's an immediate threat. It's just like, it feels like a paranormal thing.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't know what it is.
It kind of works like a trash compactor in some sense.
Yeah. And things just get sucked into vortex when he teleports and stuff like that. Anyway, the music, I wanted to for some reason at the start of it, I knew I wanted to do it in waltz time, so in 3/4. So that was something that I felt was appropriate, not only because we are at this, this is done in a biome we're calling the Academy, where there's a lot of books and these spacious halls, and it's very elegant, very, very proper, let's call it that. And I felt that I needed to bring a little bit of that elegance to the music there, and also to not make the boss way too menacing. Because if I were to do a time signature that's really complex and weird, like, I don't know, 5/4, 7/8, whatever, and have a really complex rhythm, I feel like that would evoke more intense feelings for an entity that already, it feels kind of intense. So I felt like my job here was make this boss palatable. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It makes a little bit sense. I'm trying to grasp a little bit what you're saying right now as well. It feels a little bit more complex for my brain right now.
Yeah, it's all right. But essentially, and if I were to again describe what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to get this boss battle at the end of the day to still feel hopeful and not just utter despair. And I feel like, you described the early, a very aggressive cello staccato parts. And that to me, like just that small figure, right? And everything just clicks. That to me is as hot, as menacing as I can go in the track.
Yeah. I'm guessing a little bit, considering that you're having a base of a waltz as well. It feels like waltz might not be like the greatest boss music, right? Yeah. I'm guessing you had to work a little bit harder in order to make this fit well.
Good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was hard per se. I am.
Or maybe it is due to your self-taughtness that you don't really fall into like a classical musical theory pits, maybe.
No. When I say waltz, it's more just the time signature, honestly. So just the rhythm, and I am not bound by any structural any structural rules there. I just knew that I wanted to have a 3/4 that it was emphasized, right? So you always hear that, and that's something that I wanted to have throughout the whole track, not only for cohesion, but because I want you to feel that. And that feels like an appropriate rhythm. And
it did. I mean, like I said it twice. It added drama and it added a sense of danger to it.
Yeah. So essentially that's what I want to do, and have that in contrast with the actual biomes theme, which I'm guessing we'll hear a little bit later. But on that one, for example, I do a complex time signature. It's not 3/4, but I also don't do straight 4/4. And I just wanted to have a little bit of contrast there, and ultimately just try and do a memorable boss track. In there, I didn't care too much about am I communicating something really deep and meaningful here? Sometimes a boss track just needs to be a boss track that you can bang to, right? And that's what I was trying to do here, especially because it was the first boss track I ever did.
And how did it feel to work on a boss track in consideration to an environmental track in this sense?
Yeah, so I very naturally, so because I come from a background of rock and metal, I like high energy driving music. that's my natural inclination anyway. So quite honestly, this is way easier for me to do than something like the vaults. Something like the vaults takes a lot out of me. That's where I need to be focused. You know what I mean? Like on something like vaults, I need to be like, it's like I'm one of those kids that can't stand still, and your parents are telling you, hey, but do this thing and put this block on top of the other and just do the thing, okay? But when I am doing the high intensity driving stuff, I'm just in flow constantly. I don't need reminders to keep me on track. So something like the Hawking just feels really, really good, honestly. Felt really easy to me. Yeah, it's definitely more of a instinctual gut feeling composition than necessarily a rational one.
And I really like this one based on your gut feeling. It was really good.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully other people will like it too.
Yeah, I hope so as well. One other thing that kind of comes to mind, you were talking a little bit about the boss music here. Well, it is a boss battle music, but you're talking about it in the sense, I'm getting the vibe that all the different bosses in the game has their own theme to it.
Yes.
It's not, this boss music will be on every boss.
No. Yeah, so...
How is it to create multiple boss themes in that sense?
In the sense of, like, creatively? Like, how...
Creatively, yeah. It's like, because I'm guessing the bosses are not usually kind of the same. They usually have different aspects to themselves and an understanding of why they're bosses.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about the music can have a big contrast in boss music styles as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we don't have a lot of bosses in at the moment. So there are some. So we are still trying to understand what that means. But one thing that I do know is, the whole cohesion aspect, right? So we know what the motifs are. We know the language. We know the instrumentation. We know the arrangements, how they're supposed to sound like. So we are doing our best first to maintain that cohesion. But on top of that, okay, what does this boss represent in Constance's journey?
Yeah.
And understanding that will inform me a little bit better of what I need to do. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, at the end of the day, just understand the game. And through that understanding, I will be able to do something that fits. Hopefully. Oh. Yeah.
No, but I believe in you. I mean, considering the 4 tracks that we listened to so far, I really like where this is going. And from the demo that I played as well, I feel the music is very suitable to the situations the Constance is put in, even if it's environmental situations or in a boss battle. Thus far, it sounds really well.
Thank you. Yeah. That's all I want to do.
Yeah. And you're on a good way there.
Yeah, thank you.
In my opinion.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So, how do you feel about going into the last track of the week?
Yeah.
Does it feel too early, or you're ready for it?
No, I'm ready for it. I am not used to talking about my own work. It's cool because it's just geeking out about how I'm thinking about things, and I love process. I am very interested in how people do things. Like, for example, and this is such a huge tangent, but for example, I'm completely fascinated by, like, do you know the Daytona games?
Yes.
For Sega?
Daytona!
Yes, I am fascinated by, by the composer's decisions. What made him... And it's a company, right? Like, Sega's a big company. Like, did he have to pitch it? Did he go to a round table and go do 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 do? Do you know what I mean? Like, did he go there and have to sell that, or did he just did that?
Start singing.
Put it in the game, and someone was like, "Hey, did you just put this in? Yeah, do you like it? Yeah." And it's just, I am so curious as to what decisions led for us to have Daytona, because I feel like that's such an earnest and genuine expression of self.
Definitely.
From the music to having NASCAR cars, and then at some point you do a glitch or you do a cheat and it's a horse. It's like nothing about that game makes sense, and I love it. And I am just so curious as to what drove those decisions, right? And so me talking about my decisions again feels foreign because I'm not used to it, not used to having that interest in my own thoughts. But I welcome them and I appreciate them and I do enjoy talking about them. So yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm having fun and I am ready to move along to the last track.
Yeah, but one final question, and I only want a yes or no on this one.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Are you interested in making your own kind of Daytona vibe, a vocal track for Constance?
Yes, but I won't do it because it's not fitting. But I would love to do something like that.
So we will not hear Constance.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. But it's still in production. You never know. Yeah.
You never know. The curveball might come from this podcast.
Get Constance Q4.
or just a hidden track.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, we have a lot of hit. No, it's a metroidvania, so hidden parts, hidden spaces are. Yeah, you never know what you're gonna get.
Did you find the composer in the game? He's singing. It's the most hilarious part.
Yeah.
And it's a Daytona reference.
Oof, I would love that.
Like an homage, secret homage.
Yeah, cool story. So the composer for that, it's Takenobu Mitsuyoshi. And he, I follow him on LinkedIn, or we're connected through LinkedIn. And apparently his birthday is on, like, either on Christmas Day or after the Christmas Day. And LinkedIn let me know. And I was just like, hey, happy birthday. I'm looking forward to the new Virtua Fighter game, because he also sang on the Virtua Fighter trailer. I'm like, I'm looking forward to that. And he replied with a thumbs up. And that, to me, I felt so good.
Yeah, that is the best. I mean, just getting a response, it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. I got my response.
We're fans of Star Trek. Yeah, we're getting awesomely happy.
Yep. So do with that what you will.
Yeah. So on that happy note, let's head into the last track of the week. And we already talked a little bit about this area. It is called Academy. The nice neatness violins, I guess there is here. This was Academy. A dramatic sense of freedom, question mark. Feels wrong saying that, but the music feels very free. Like I'm soaring in the sky to some extent. But at the same time, I still feel a sense of urgency, or something is missing. Could be the minimalistic part of this track, as the instruments themselves, they act like it's a dance, both starting and ending with this like minimalistic strumming melody. Where this track is played, I could not find this in the demo, so I'm guessing, is this a little bit of a taste of what to come?
Yeah.
Or what's up with Academy?
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure. We had a demo with the Academy out, so I'm not quite sure which one you had. So
yeah, this is demo number 2 that is out currently on Steam. So most likely there's a 1.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we have Academy on the second demo. So it's an area it was done. It needs tweaks. Let's put it like that. So it needs some tweaks, but we already have a sense of what's going on there. All the enemies are there and all that stuff. But yeah, I guess for this one, what I really wanted to do is, again, I wanted to make it an emphasis that the rhythm is understandable. And we talked earlier that, for this one, I went for a 5/4 kind of thing. And that's essentially what the plucking strings are doing. So they're always doing the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
Oh.
So that they're just outlining the rhythm that I want to have for the whole thing. And yeah, for some reason, when I told you my process that I put the build on and start playing with my MIDI controller, and for some reason this just kept screaming 5/4 to me, and I don't know why that is. I don't know why I came to this conclusion, but usually when I have a strong inclination to do something musically, I try not to ignore it, because I feel like there is, I don't know,
purpose to it.
Yeah, I don't know why. Call it whatever. Call it the muses. Call it. You can call it whatever you want. I'm not sure if I have a name for it, but I just try not to ignore that feeling.
Yeah.
For me, in this area, it's you have a lot of high ceiling in this area. So, for example, unlike the vaults where it's cavernous, it feels a little bit claustrophobic and things might fall on top of you or whatever. On this one, it just feels really open and spacious, and you have these bookshelves that go up, and these windows that are really big, and just a bigger space. And I wanted to so the fact that you use the word freedom is very interesting to me, because I guess I communicated that in some way. Because you haven't even played on this in this area, so I just
exactly
So I find that really interesting that you caught up on something of that nature, and I guess that was
feels
it.
Free, in a sense,
and you have space, I guess, and that's what I wanted to do. In terms of the communication aspect of this area, I wasn't really thinking all too much about what is Constance feeling at this moment. It was more of I think in this place, it's location over Constance.
Okay.
Like where she is right now versus how she feels right now. Because that will come more apparent in other times. And yeah, so for example, on something like Vaults, I feel like it makes more sense to understand how she feels than here in the academy, for example. So there's always a shift, or there's an ongoing shift of perspectives, or how I am utilizing the music to represent different things in the game. And I am not always keeping the perspective on Constance. Like, it's not always through the lens of Constance. Because maybe if it were a movie or something like that, I could make it like that. But because it is a video game, I feel like I need to represent different perspectives there as well. So there's the perspective of Constance, there's the perspective of the enemies that inhabit that space, there's the perspective of the space itself, because in this case, I feel like it's important because it's her own mind, this is inside of her own psyche. So that has a life of itself as well. And going around those different perspectives is important for me. And I guess that in this place, it felt more important to communicate what the place is and what that environment is. Because I feel like you haven't played it there, but I feel like the enemies in this place feel also rather different from other places. And so they needed a moment to shine and
themselves
and allow themselves to express themselves. Yeah, that makes sense.
We talked a little bit about Constance and how she's put into the center and sometimes environments and so on.
Yeah.
In the sense where we're placing Constance in the centerfold of the music, does that mean we also will have multiple tracks for different regions when Constance will be the center point in how she feels or something?
Yeah, that's something that I can't talk too much about, not because it's hidden things. It's because we are working on it. So I don't have definite answers for you. We are doing our best at making these tracks adaptive. So
Yep.
I don't want these loops to just be playing all over, right? I want to add elements in, take elements out based on gameplay and all that stuff.
Of course, fully understandable from my part.
Yeah, and because of that, and because we're still playing around with that and how that should sound, it's very difficult for me to answer that question.
So it's a work in progress, and we'll see.
Yeah, that's the answer I can give you now.
Yeah, but that's all okay in my opinion. I mean, we're talking about the game that is still in production, still in development, and there's only a demo available to players right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Everything is still subject to change. No, well, not graphic-wise.
Yeah. But, I mean, this is something that, I don't know, if you'll have me again, I can talk about it a little bit better after the game is out.
Yeah, most likely we can have that happen.
For sure.
No, but I think I'm not having any intermediate, instant questions surrounding this anymore. It feels like we covered the demo really well and your thought processes on certain things here.
Yeah.
So unless there's something else you feel like I missed, I think we can go into the closing questions I have for Constance.
Yeah, for sure. Let me think about that real quickly. Yeah, I think we talked about what's happening in the overall experience of Constance. Another thing, and this is not related to music, but if you'll allow me a non-musical thoughts, but still audio. I think that we're also putting a big emphasis on what the ambiences are. So, for example, even in the trailer, if people who are listening to this go check the trailer out. I think it was the first trailer. I don't remember which trailer, which sounds bad, but in one of them trailers, we have these shots of her running and going through the various locations. And it was very important for us that even in the trailer, we have different ambiences showcasing there, right?
Oh,
and like on the first one, I think it's the vaults, and you hear the dripping, you hear the cavernous area, and then the Foundry shows, and it's more of an open space, and you hear the birds and the sun shining, sort of like the sun shining doesn't make a sound, but you know what I mean. And so sound design wise, I also feel like all of the creative approaches and perspectives and lenses that we talked about for the music, I am also having those considerations for the sound design as well. And I guess I just wanted to mention that's like, because I am doing all of the audio on this game, I am not doing a particular emphasis of one over the other. I consider them both really important, and I am doing my best with the time, that I'm given to communicate the important things on the musical side, but also on the sound design side. Because quite honestly, on the sound design side, I wouldn't say it's more important than music, but sound design has a big responsibility of communicating gameplay situations. If you hit something, you need to know you hit something. If you've gotten damage, you need to know you've gotten damage. Like there's these very specific states that you need to understand, and they need to be tight. So having this high responsibility on the part of the sound design needs to then complement, or rather, the music needs to not obstruct that communication that the sound design needs to make. And often enough, the sound design needs to be very, it doesn't have a lot of time to communicate that, right? It's like half a second, if that much. When you hit something,
it's very instant.
Yeah, it's very quick. So coming up with those sounds is also quite the challenge.
I fully understand. I've done one job as an audio director as well, and working with sound effects, especially working with sound effects, how many of them can be at the same time is really a struggle.
Yes. So, there's all of the creative things we've talked about for music are also applicable for sound design. And ultimately, because I am, implementing a lot of these myself, of course, I have the help of the programmer, Leo. Leo's a godsend. He helps me a ton. But in that collaboration, it does mean that we are always thinking about, okay, what are the best ways of implementing the ideas we have? Because quite honestly, I have a lot of ideas that are very hard to do. And, we talk amongst ourselves, and it's like, okay, let's think about
What's achievable?
Yeah, the workable solution, and we come to that.
Yeah.
And then we do our best at implementing that solution. So yeah, it's I guess there's that added layer of being in this project specifically, because I think someone that would come into this project to just do one or the other would be a very different experience than what I have. And because we are talking about my experience specifically with Constance and still being in production, I guess what I would love for listeners to take away from this is there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of different things that I have to think about that interfere with all the other parts. So when I'm thinking about music, it interferes with sound design and vice versa, right? And being mindful of that is really helpful. Being somewhat organized is really helpful. And again, we've talked about organization a little bit earlier, and I'm not perfect there, but I'm doing my best at being organized and just making sure that at the end of the day, right, I am outputting something that I'm proud of, something that's high quality. Because when there's a team, when you have someone that understands audio and is an expert in audio, and say, hey, do this, take these frequencies out, this part of the song needs to go out because it isn't working. I don't get that type of feedback, Yeah. And that as a freelancer is a reality that I learned way too late. And when I say way too late, that sounds doomsday-ish. But I didn't mean to sound it like that. What I mean is I could have learned it sooner, because getting good feedback in terms of making your output of higher quality is so important. And everyone in the team has given me amazing feedback. It's just that sometimes I just need someone to tell me in a very technical, audio technical way, hey, this sound isn't working because it's, 200 milliseconds too long. And if you actually make it snappier and enhance and transient and bring low, that sort of talk would sometimes be so helpful. But I don't get that
it's
luxury.
Kind of audiophile. Dynamic on it.
And that's in that regard, I would love to understand, for example, how AAA sound departments work, because I guess that's how great games get amazing audio, because there's so many experts in there, and within that amazing group of highly qualified individuals, they workshop it out.
Yeah.
And when you're a freelancer working on a smaller game where you're the expert, you need to find ways to get feedback that is relevant to you. Not only is it the feedback from the game director, which again, I have an amazing relationship with Sebastian. He's amazing. I love the way he communicates with me, but he has a cap on how he can talk about audio. Yeah. Right. And he's a musician, by the way. He's a drummer. So he's even So
he has the little extra to help at least.
Yeah, even then, there's sometimes where I would have loved to have a little bit of more technical feedback. And this is not to anyone's fault.
No.
Yeah. But if you're a freelancer and you're trying to, up your game when you're working on your projects, try and find people that can give you that feedback. Maybe it's a friend that also does what you do. Have them sign an NDA and test the game with you, and that's a good way of getting feedback. Yeah,
that sounds good. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Yeah, to be honest.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, for people who might be struggling getting into the first gig and so on, I think this podcast episode specifically then has been, I think, good reference for where to kind of get in to utilize networking and utilizing the internet today, communities, so to speak. And now also, these are some people you might need to have surrounding yourself if you're aiming to become a freelancing composer. Yeah. As well.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of grit. That I know.
Yeah. And if you allow me to add a little something on top of that, I think that just being a freelancer means that you do a bunch of things yourself, but it doesn't mean that you need to do it alone. And I'd really love to make a distinction there, which is, yes, you need to. I'm going to use my example, right? I know that many people are not in the same situation that I am, as in I do music, sound design, and can also implement. So I'm just using that experience. But that means that I have 3 areas that I need to consistently practice. And that means that
it's a lot.
Yeah, that means that my time is limited. That means that oftentimes I learn on the job. And I am very open with this, by the way. Like if my clients ask me, hey, do you know how to, implement stuff directly in Unreal Engine? And I'll tell them, hey, I don't have a lot of experience with that. I've done it. But my first 2 weeks will be just understanding the project and then getting a flow. And if they're okay with that, then we'll move forward, right? So that takes a lot of time. But not only that, there's a cap to how much you can improve by yourself. So it's really important that if you are in a scenario like the one I just said, where, hey, I really need to get my implementation chops on this specific engine, maybe you'll know someone and you can just ask them for an hour of their time. Even consider paying someone for an hour of their time and see if they can shortcut you to success.
Definitely.
Because, I love YouTube, but sometimes YouTube can be very hard to curate.
Problematic.
Yeah, to curate what you need, right? And sometimes all you want to do is, hey, I have this specific scenario where the scene is set up like this and yada, 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 and I just needed to do this. How do I do it? And that person will answer that in 5-10 minutes, right? And that's a lot of time saved, again, because if you're a freelancer, your time is really important. And you don't really have sometimes the time nor the patience nor the energy to just go on YouTube and be like, how do I do this?
And it's so interesting as well, because this is something that happens on a daily basis. Programmers need to Google like every day.
Yeah, Stack Overflow is their best friend, right?
Issues.
Yeah. And that's okay. So I think in creative endeavors, sometimes we forget about that. We forget that, hey, you know what? You can just go see how someone else handled this problem and just steal the solution to that problem, not steal their creativity, not steal their art, music, insert whatever, but steal the solution and be like, he handled it like this, or that person handled it like that. Okay, I'm gonna now appropriate the solution and see how that molds into my scenario. Yeah. I think that's really
great
important.
answer. Yeah. Great answer.
Thank you.
So, in order to close this down a little bit together with Constance, I want to ask 2 final questions.
Absolutely.
And let's start with the more struggling one, I would say. The challenge. Has it been any challenge so far for yourself with this project that you felt like, oh, this was a hurdle, and it could be an amazing feeling getting over that, of course. But was there any challenge with like a new instrument or new set of implementation, etc.?
It's a good question. I will ramble a bit and I'll land on an answer, which is there are a lot of things that we've spoken a little bit about my background, and I will start the answer with, I am so eternally grateful to be where I am right now, because I never in a million years would I think that I would be living like in Berlin doing music for video games and being able to do it apparently sustainably, at least until so far, and things are working out. I am so grateful for that. But getting here was not easy. Like, getting to this point was very, very hard. And it meant being uncomfortable on a lot of different categories of my life several times. And it still means that now. And it will mean that in the future. And I think that for me, because I don't have that musical background, like that musical education background, I have a lot of imposter syndrome on that end all the time. It's very hard for me to sometimes let it go. I do my best to not allow it to affect me. And I had a lot. So now going a little bit more into your question, I think that quite honestly, the first 2 years of working on Constance have been very challenging in terms of imposter syndrome until I went to the last Gamescom and I talked to people that played our game and wanted to talk to me because they love my music. And that was... It was amazing.
Eye-opener, I guess.
Yeah. Like, that was just because, when people ask me about, what do you want to do? How do you want to live your life and stuff like that? And every single time someone asks me that, I just say, I'm already doing what I want to be doing. I just want to make games, music for games that allow people to, for like 5 seconds, forget they have their worries, forget they have all the negativity around their lives. I just want them to be in the game for a while and get immersed in that, and nothing bad is going on around them. That's all I want to do. Yeah. All I want to do. And I went to Gamescom last year, and I realized I do that already. And that was like, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, it was such... Like, it made me so emotional then, because like I remember, I go to Gamescom usually as a freelancer because I'm there networking. I'm trying to get meetings. I'm trying to develop my business a little bit more, right? And the BTF guys, so they were there showcasing Constance and letting people know that this game exists. And they sent me a message and they're like, "Hey Tiago, can you come to the booth? Someone would love to talk to you." And I'm like, "What? Yeah, can you come over?" And I'm like, "I'll be there in 5 minutes." Like, I was... I don't know if you've ever been at Gamescom, but it's huge, right?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not. I would like to go there one day.
Yeah.
But expensive too.
Yeah, I'm sure one day you'll go. And if you do, please let me know. But Cone Messe is amazingly huge. I was on the other side of the hall. And as soon as you told me this, I just start running. Yes, of course, I'll go there. Not because I... like. Please understand, I care zero about people knowing me or recognizing me. It's not about that. It's just someone wanted to talk to me because they wanted to let me know exactly what I was sharing earlier, right? Hey, your music took me to another place for X amount of time. And knowing that has helped me a ton with my imposter syndrome. Because I got confirmation that what I'm doing is actually what I'm supposed to be doing. And I know for a fact that a lot of composers don't get that. I'm very fortunate to have gotten that. And, I'm still starting. I know I've been at this for a decade-ish. Yeah. But in terms of my first real game, Constance is that one. And the fact that I'm getting that with my first game is...
a blessing.
Yeah. And I don't know what to make of it, if I'm honest. It feels kind of surreal at the same time, but I am seeing this move in a good direction. It feels right to me. Yeah, I'm just really excited to get more of those interactions because I just want to put a smile on people's faces. That's it. And apparently I'm already doing that. And if I can continue doing this until the day I die, I'll be a happy camper. So... Yeah, man. That's my answer to your question. I've felt the challenge ever since that happened. A weight has been lifted off my shoulders.
Yeah, and also it also feels like the answer to the next question as well. Okay. What's the achievement of this?
Yeah,
then considering any achievement you've gotten so far working on Constance.
Yeah,
it kind of feels like you already answered that with getting that serene feeling that you're doing something right.
Yeah, but I can add a layer to that. So.
Yeah, please do.
At that same Gamescom, I also got to be part of this final compilation where I put my trailer track, and it was the first time a piece of my music got into a physical medium
form.
Yeah. Actually, no, sorry, I'm lying. I've already done that twice for a project based out of Japan, but that one was more of a hobbyist kind of thing back in the day. And while I'm very proud of it and I love it, I guess it's not the same weight as having something pressed on vinyl. And also a cool thing about it is I'm now in negotiations for the soundtrack to also have a physical release. So that might also happen. Not confirming, I don't know, but
the fingers crossed. We hope for it in the end.
That might...
especially for people out there that really like this soundtrack as well. We really hope that there will be a physical in the end.
Yeah, I hope so too.
So let's hope.
Yeah, so that's, I'm personally, I was never much of a physical edition kind of person. So my girlfriend is actually the one who started, oh, Tiago, it's good to have nice things and to have collector items. And, I know people cannot see this because you're seeing me on the video, but even that art, that's I've sent those posters in because I've never bought art for myself.
Yeah.
Like I've never bought a cool looking thing for myself. I'm not that kind of guy. And she was like, no, Tiago, you can do this. Like, it's okay to have nice looking things for you and you appreciate them and you're an artist, so you can appreciate other artists. And yeah, it took a while for me to get that shift. And the fact that now I can possibly do that with my music for others is also such a blessing, such a cool achievement. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that if it moves forward. So yeah, I guess that's the other layer to what I just shared.
That is amazing. I'm really hoping for this.
Yeah.
For everything, not just for you, but for everybody else who's super interested in it.
Yeah.
In this.
Yeah. If it comes up, I'll let you know.
Yeah. You will definitely post about it, I hope.
Yeah, and you need to review it, remember?
Oh, yeah, right. On the backside of the LP, Chris, comment on every...
Yeah, 100%.
So, with this closing down now, first and foremost, is there anything else you felt like we missed on this before we're closing down our talk on Constance?
No. I mean, if you get me talking about anything, I will talk forever. So this is a good closing point. And
good closing point.
Yeah, it's a good closing point. I think there are a lot of, I think it's really healthy for freelancers in game audio, and not just freelancers, but anyone in game audio to really start talking about their processes. There's a lot of information online on how people do things. I think there could be more. And maybe this is a way of me contributing towards that. And I appreciate you having this podcast, and thank you for having me on, and just sharing my thoughts.
It's amazing. This is what this podcast is all about, putting the composer in the spotlight and making them shine. Because for me, it's usually when you're talking about a good video game, you usually tend to talk about Hideo Kojima or some selected few big Yoko Shimomura, Nobuo Uematsu, so on. But they're like the really big ones. But there are so many composers out there that make amazing music, and you don't really hear people's names for making this. And it is crazy. So this is my way of saying thank you to composers as well.
Yeah, no, that was deep, man. I love that statement. Thank you. Yeah. Amazing.
So with that, we're closing down the talk of Constance and focusing a little bit back on you, Tiago. So what's the next step? We already know Constance is not done. So you're going to continue with that. But is there anything else that you can talk about that is coming up for you?
Unfortunately, there are things that I cannot talk about, which...
Yep, NDA, understand.
Yeah, which I myself don't know if they're moving forward or not. But crossing fingers, and hopefully they move forward. But at least in terms of video games, in terms of my work with Constance, as you said, coming out in Q4, I don't know what will happen after Constance. I am looking forward towards knowing what will happen in then. I hope that people will feel excited about it, and hopefully similar cool looking projects are then available to me. And when I say similar, I don't mean similar in the sense of, a metroidvania. I just mean in the sense of, small
video game.
Yeah, small teams that really believe in what they're doing and have something to say. So
it sounds amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So if Constance is also a gateway towards that happening, of me having more of an open door towards more stuff like that, man, I'll be excited for that. Yeah,
I'm betting it will be.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
And if people, maybe there's a developer listening in and want music for their game, how can they get in contact with you then? Which socials are you utilizing?
Yeah, so I am on X. I don't know my handles, so no. I actually had, no joke, I had to I have two screens. I had to pull my handles right now because I don't know them by heart. And I'm on your document, and this is funny. And I'm here just like, yes, I am at Tiago Rodrigues Music on X. So be on the lookout for that. Maybe you'll put it on the show notes. So maybe it's easier.
Yeah, the show notes will have all the links as well. So people don't need to write down everything as they're listening.
Yeah, and if you want to reach out to my personal website, it's my name, so tiagorodriguescomposer.com. And you can also contact me through the contact form there. And that's essentially it. But I'm on Blue Sky as well. I don't know my handle there. I'm sure you can find me if you write my name there. I'm also on Instagram. Again, don't know my handle. Type my name. And
I will make Tiago post his link so I can post them in the show notes.
Yeah. I am very bad. So last thing for other freelancers, do a better job at social media than I do, please. I am so bad.
Get your handle straight.
Yeah, get your handle straight. Try and have them consistent across all of them. I don't have them consistent because my name is common in Portuguese, so it's a problem. Anyway, try and get that consistency. Try and have them on hand so that people, when people do ask about them, like Chris just did, you can just give it to them. You know what? Here's something, and it's your handle, all consistent across every single social media. Don't be like me, please.
And also, it's good to remember your consistency within this, because if they're easy to remember as well, it's easy for you to give them away.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's easy for the people that might be your customers to know them as well.
Yeah. And then, for example, I know I will have this problem. Sooner or later, I'll change mine. And this podcast will be older. And then people will come to this and they'll not be linked to me. So
that's the problem that will happen, people.
Yes. I am doing myself such a huge disservice, and I know this.
Yeah.
But I don't have patience for social media. I would love to just hire someone to do that for me. But I am not at that level yet. Perhaps one day.
But in the future, after Constance, maybe, the position might open.
For sure. One can hope.
It will open as soon as possible, at least.
One can hope.
Yeah. So, thank you so much for joining in. It's been a blast talking to you.
Thank you.
Mean, this is one of the longer episodes.
Nice.
In near time, at least. 2 hours and 46 minutes at the moment. And we, of course, talked a little bit before we started recording.
Yeah.
So, it's been an exciting time. I am definitely going to keep an eye on you.
Thank you.
Or it might sound better for me to keep an ear on you because music.
Sure. For sure.
In your general direction to see what's going on.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing since you're on the Discord as well, if people are interested in asking questions in connection to the episode, you might answer these as well over time when social hits.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone is always invited to talk to me, invited to send me a message. Yeah. For example, we were talking about Bernardo, right? That's how Bernardo reached out to me. He reached out to me on LinkedIn, and he was like, hey, because he used to live in the US, and he moved back to Portugal. And he was like, hey, I am now living in Portugal. I am starting to want to network in video game circles. Hey, can we get on a call? And we got on a call, and we're good friends now. And he, again, he's an amazing guy. I love him. And so anyone feel free to just send me a message. Even if I reply late, I will reply. Yeah.
Sooner or later.
Yeah.
So, with that said, if you listen on this episode, like this episode, and want to listen in on more episodes of Gameable Audio, you find those other episodes on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and Pocket Cast. And don't forget to also subscribe to our new YouTube channel as well. Just search for Gameable Audio and you'll find it there. And feel free to follow and comment on one of our social medias as well, either on Facebook or on Instagram. Just search for Gameable Audio there as well. And if you want to support this podcast financially, there's a good reason to do that, because there's giveaways and etc. for games, soundtracks, etc. over time. So feel free to support Gameable Audio over on Patreon. Currently, as we're recording this, there's this giveaway for the later game, Void Rot. And I think that will be like right in, if I remember correctly. I'm just double checking. No, it will be after. So people will hear this and miss that giveaway. So that's what happens when you're not a backer already. Because the current awesome backers that we have today is Daniel Onemark, Mike Björkholm, Lars Schenström, Titti Schenström, Kevin Wikström, Sandris Wikström, Mats El Kebab Tapper Holmqvist, Alexander Halldén, and Robin Jonsson. Thank you so much for being a part and supporting this podcast. It helps a lot, to be honest. Especially now, since at this point in time, I'm currently out of a job, unemployed, so...
I hope that sorts out soon, by the way. Yeah,
I hope it works out soon as well. I'm enthusiastic and positive to the future on this. Yeah. And links to where you can either buy and support, in this case, Tiago in the end. I mean, support him by following him in this sense, and we'll have our fingers crossed to get that physical recording, and hopefully we will be able to support him there.
Yeah, thank you.
Those will be in the show notes and episode description. And for the next episode, we have another guest. It's not just a guest, it's two guests, to be honest, as we're going to have a dual Aeon special featuring the two artists behind that band. It is Magnus Johansson and David Almroth. This is like a small little pop-ish type of band that has some reference to video games, etc. And I'm just super stoked to get down and talk to them in the future as well. And for the episode theme music, it was, as always, composed by amazing Thor Myrdal. And yeah, that is everything. This was episode 51 on the topic of Constance, the game that is currently in development and demo is available over on Steam. And I am your host, Christofer Schenström, and with me I had Tiago Rodrigues. Amazing talk. Thank you yet again. And yeah, with this I want to say thank you to everybody who's listening in, commenting on everything, and sharing the episodes. And with this said, take care everybody, and see you all guys next time.
Ciao everyone.